Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pestana. And we're here today with special guest, Michelle Gladieux, who's here to share with us her new book, Communicate with Courage, Taking Risks to Overcome the 4 Hidden Challenges. So isn't it time you start making impactful changes in your life, starting with your communication? Then this is a show for you. So Michelle Gladieux is an author and the president of Gladieux Consulting, a Midwest-based team known for top-notch design and presentation of seminars in communication and leadership topics around the U.S. She provides executive coaching and facilitates strategic planning for clients in diverse industries, in governments, at nonprofits, and in academia. Michelle has over 18 years of teaching experience at 3 universities in her home state of Indiana. She's served on several boards of directors, including National Public Radio affiliate in her hometown for more than a dozen years. So let's welcome to the show, Michelle Gladieux.
Thanks so much for having me.
What an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. So I've got to ask you, what inspired you to write this?
Well, I just think the better we get at communication, the easier life goes. So it's been a lifetime passion, but one of the reasons I wrote it is because it's taken me so long to learn some of these lessons and to refine some of these pro moves that we can all try out as communicators. And I would like to save others some time.
Well, it's what a legacy to leave for people, because you're so right. Communication is like the crux and the key to everything. So it's either how well we communicate that people understand us and what we're trying to convey. It can mean so many different things. Where do you think people get hung up?
Well, I think there are 4 hidden challenges as I look back through my lifetime as an executive coach and trainer in leadership and communication skills. I personally have seen 4 hidden challenges that have tripped me up, and I see them tripping others up. And, we're all a unique mix of strengths and weaknesses, and no one has had a perfect life. So we arrive at adulthood and young adulthood in a situation where we have some crosses that we might be bearing, that it would be good if we could sort of figure out what we might be missing and what we might be afraid of and set those fears down.
I think that's such an important piece. And I know you start off your book with vulnerability, which is interesting because I think a lot of times people look at that and they're either not too sure how to use vulnerability, or B, they think it's an automatic weakness. So I'd love for you to share on that.
Sure, I sure did. I was not able to apologize as a young adult, and even into middle age, I was still struggling with saying I'm wrong, saying I'm sorry, admitting where I didn't have control or why I needed to feel that I was in control. And I keep looking at myself and taking baby steps towards how I can be more courageous as a communicator. And so that's one of the things I've added. I'm proud to say, if I hurt your feelings on the radio show today, I'm going to be calling you later to apologize. And I hope that I wouldn't. But you're right. It takes a strong person to admit that they need other people and to put their emotions into words and to draw boundaries and negotiate and ask for forgiveness and say, I love you. And some of the best stuff in life comes from admitting that we don't have it all together and allowing ourselves to grow each day by trying a little harder in some areas of life when we communicate. Or that is my view. That is my personal passion and view.
So how can someone start to become vulnerable when we look at communication? Because I think a lot of times, like how you're saying, it took a while to say I'm sorry or to come to that point. So what are some baby steps people can take?
Baby steps would be take a look at those 4 hidden challenges and see if it applies to you or which apply to you. Sometimes all 4 can apply to us in any given day. 4 hidden challenges are hiding from risk. And that's when we know darn well we have weakness, but we're afraid that others might notice. And so we don't get to act on our values. So a baby step would be think about what you value and what you're willing to communicate for. Another challenge that I run into with loved ones and training clients and coaching clients is defining to be right. And that's when we're so darn sure, and we forget that we only experience life from our own perspective. So the baby step would be, rather than defining to be right and being so sure that we are, ask others about their experience, even their experience of how we communicate. So what's it like to live with me? What's it like to work with me? What could I do differently? What do you like about my communication? The third hidden challenge is rationalizing the negative, and that's when we shield ourselves from taking chances to say the hard thing or face a conflict or admit how we feel to someone. And what we're trying to do there is talk ourselves out of it. So we are focused on things we may not verbalize out loud, but our self-talk can center on what might go wrong, and that can stop us from trying. And the fourth hidden challenge that I write about and am now teaching about is settling for good enough. And I'm not suggesting that our listeners have to strive all the time in their written and verbal communication and in the way they listen or in their presentation style, but I think we should all be striving part of the time and really pushing ourselves. So a baby step to overcome settling for good enough is perhaps think about where you might be able to give just 1%, like the last conversation you had with someone. What could you have done just a little bit differently that might have brought a higher payoff to the time spent communicating? And we have fun with that in training events. We hear things like, well, when I think about that, I guess I could have sounded more confident or sounded less arrogant, or I could have asked their opinion first. I could have avoided saying something rudely because I was, feeling busy and important, or I could have reread my email before I hit send. One training participant said, and I thought it was very honest, it made me laugh, I could have picked up the call sounding like I cared. I thought, oh, bless you for being so honest. But yeah, that's a transfer of energy. And there are all these little transfer of energies in our day and night. So I wrote the book to help people pay attention to the energy they project.
Well, and it seems that when we write letters or emails or text messages, a lot can get really misinterpreted there. So how do we approach it, maybe with a better attitude or just a better thought process?
Well, the question becomes, are you open to learning, or have you already achieved all the accomplishments possible in communication? So if we look at that logically, I'd say communication skills, listening and talking and writing and presenting, I don't think we ever graduate. There's always something that could be better. And the good news about working on how we communicate and being willing to accept feedback from outside sources or help from others is that we win at the same time our family wins and our coworkers and employers win. So as we better ourselves, we're helping others at the same time. So whether a person comes into the study of communication and starts to look at their lives as communicators because they want to benefit themselves or others, there's something there for them.
So what if we are communicating with people who are just have like really tough attitudes? How do we interpret it and then respond?
By tough attitudes, do you mean like they are someone who you would say is difficult to communicate with, or they're not emotive? Or can you tell me a little bit more about difficult attitudes?
Well, difficult to communicate with.
Because they are sometimes what?
Let's say there's sometimes just like someone at work, they're difficult to communicate with because maybe they are feeling like their work is being judged.
That's a good one. Yeah, so maybe you're giving a performance review, delivering a performance review, or you're asking someone for a change in behavior and they are resistant. In that case, a good strategy would be to imagine how you would feel if you were on the other side of the conversation and acknowledge that, and maybe acknowledge the weirdness. If it's a tough conversation, it's okay to say, hey, I have some feedback for you and I'm a little nervous about delivering it, or that might not be ideal if you're trying to maintain positional power, but you could say, I want you to know this isn't easy to say or to hear. And then if it goes reasonably well at the end of a tough conversation, you can and maybe should compliment the person about the way that they stayed focused or that they were open to the feedback, or thank them for listening. It's a strong person who listens, and And thank you for thinking about this. So to sum up that advice, I would say we're trying to stay on the same level. Whenever we're communicating with someone, we're remembering that we're equally valuable. I believe there's no human who is less valuable than me. I also believe there's no human who is created more valuable than me. And that helps a lot with whichever human I'm talking to. It helps me believe it's going to go well and meet the person where they are, not condescend and not defer.
I
Does
really
that help?
like how, yes, I really like how
Okay.
you look at and view that, because it really helps. I think if everyone looked at people that way, I have folks that I'm surrounded myself with that we are all equals. It really takes a lot of stress off, regardless who has a PhD and who works at McDonald's or what have you.
It helped me ask a doctor recently, what would you, if this were you, what would you do? What would you tell a member of your family? And the advice should, of course, be the same, but that's an example of equalizing power, or asking for a little more attention to the case from someone who tends to be revered in society, and it might get into your head that you are some way less than.
I
It's not
like,
easy. It's not easy, but this is something we can keep in the back of our head, and we should. And some of us struggle more with coming off as arrogant. Some of us come off as too meek. And sometimes it depends on the situation or who you're communicating with. Just aim for that middle way.
it's like a practice then, something you practice at.
Something I practice and advise others to practice for sure. It helps
Yeah.
public speakers not be quite as shaky in front of a big room.
Oh, well, that's good, because I know a lot of times people have that problem. First thing that comes up is like, oh, I've got to speak in front of a bunch of people. Not only am I shaking, but I think I just lost my voice.
Yes, I've been there. I've seen it. I've had my hands shake in different situations, put the index cards down and put them behind my back, been like, whoa, my body's reacting to this fear. And there are definitely some good tips, I think, in my book, Communicate with Courage. If anyone that's listening wants to be a more polished public speaker, I think even great public speakers can take a few tips away from that book. But again, I'll be working on that skill as long as I live.
Well, I think it's something everyone should really cultivate, because again, and you mentioned this in your book, how we're going to be surrounded by different types of people with different personalities and life stories and what have you throughout our journey. So, and everything is based off relationships. That's such a big, important thing. It's not just the relationships we have at home or good friends. It really goes beyond that.
Amen. And I think that there is often more we can do to improve a situation as communicators than we realize. And that sort of ties back to rationalizing the negative. Well, he's not going to listen. He never has. They don't care because management won't do anything, or the employees aren't hearing us and won't. I hear so many people make broad generalizations and come to snap conclusions about what will and won't work in communication. So definitely wanted to put this book together to help people visualize some potential wins. Because if we can't visualize the win, we can't achieve the win. However, you also need to practice writing, speaking, and listening to get good at it. And the payoffs are outstanding.
That's amazing. Well, and what do you say to people about how they should speak to themselves?
Well, let's start with me. I attended a mindfulness seminar recently, and the presenter asked us to think of a good friend who's going through a tough time or maybe made a very bad mistake, and then what we would say to try to lift that friend's spirits. What would we say to them? And I wrote a lot of things like, I love you, you're a good person, I believe you'll get through this, look at these other things you've been through, and came out with flying colors on the other side, very supportive and specific. And then he said, and now the person is you, write down what you say to yourself. And I wrote, like, in capital letters, get your shit together, Michelle. It wasn't very nice, but that's what I say to myself sometimes. So I think we can all be in an exercise together on this planet where we just start to become aware of the messages we send ourselves. And maybe some of those harsh messages are true and even deserved. Then we can work on those things while trying to maintain self-love. And some of them won't be true. And our executive coaching clients that do this exercise of catching oneself, talking to oneself, and jot it down and bring it to our next monthly coaching session. I've had some folks cross out some pretty negative things they say about themselves, and the relief was evident in their shoulders and their ears became further apart, and they took a deep breath, maybe for the first time in a long time, as they crossed off, I'm a bad mom, or I'm a bad boss, because they couldn't find any data to support it.
Well, it's interesting. A lot of this language comes from just our programming as children, things that we've heard from parents, and we kind of relate that into later life. And, bad kid becomes bad mom.
That's a great point. And I focus my practice coaching and teaching on adults, usually 21 and up, unless someone has a teenage child and they want that young person to talk a little bit about career paths or something, or problems in the part-time job or full-time job. Usually I'm working with adults, and usually what we need to work on can be traced back to those formative years. I agree.
In your book, you talk about hiding from risk, and you mentioned it just a little bit ago. So what does that mean?
Hiding from risk happens when we are thinking about what we have to lose. And so we focus so much on that, we hang back instead of getting in the game as a communicator, which then creates a situation where we miss opportunities to make our mark in a positive way for ourselves and our families and in workplaces. So if we can get past the fear of people figuring out that we don't have it all together all the time, we can also be pretty inspiring. I know I just love a powerful person, a smart person, someone who's at the top of their game saying, oops, man, I really messed that up. I just don't hear that very often. And in the CEOs that I coach, I try to applaud when I see somebody admit in front of, let's say, their employees that they were wrong or that they don't know an answer. It's like, oh, I'd follow you anywhere. You're real. So hiding from risk is definitely something I think worth reading about and overcoming.
I think anyone would love to hear that from some people. It's because we all have bad hair days. Something's going to happen. We're going to miss something, you name it.
Absolutely. I've looked down when in public speaking situations and with large audiences, and noticed once recently at a very early event that I had two different shoes on. So I didn't bring it up. I was thinking, is there a way to make a teaching point here or bring some humor to this? But it wasn't necessary. I just needed to get out of my own head and remember that those people who are listening to the presentation are really more interested in the actual meat of the presentation, the message, and I'm just a vessel in service to getting that instructional material to the audience. And so I can not worry. So, I want to look professional and ideally have the same shoes on, but they're going, if I'm passionate about it and most interested in their understanding and use of the material, then it won't matter too much, those small things that might feel scary.
And they might thought of you, starting a new trend.
That's right. It's hip. It's fashionable. Here in Fort Wayne, Indiana, we're starting a new trend, Marianne.
Hey, I've done that myself, so I understand. In your book, and this is probably a good segue into biases, and kind of talking about biases. So do we all have biases?
Of course. We have biases we're not aware of. Researchers have found more than 100, I think it's 180 plus different subconscious biases that can live rent-free in our heads that we're not even aware we're acting on. There's a great free online survey instrument called the Harvard Implicit Bias Test. And if you Google that, you can find it and you sign up, and it runs you through a series of different quick exercises, quick answers. And pretty soon you come to see how you've been programmed to believe that certain ways of being in the world are less acceptable or less valuable, and that's not really based on any scientific proof, but rather our biases. So it's the first thing we can do about that is just admit, of course, that it's impossible for us to focus on all the data that's coming at us all the time, and so we tend to stereotype and compartmentalize, and that can lead to biased decision making. So we do at Gladieux Consulting, we do very frequently, we have clients that want annual harassment prevention or leveraging diversity or bias reduction training. And so we go in as imperfect subject matter experts that have our own bias, and we teach folks about bias, hoping that they can start to notice their thoughts. And that's one way to help bias actions be reduced in our personal and professional lives.
I think that's so important, especially if we don't even know what they are. My goodness, to be able to identify them and then start working on them. What a game changer that is.
The only red flag that I can think of is the person who defensively says, I don't have any bias.
Oh boy.
Yeah. We don't want to believe we do.
Well,
what a lifetime journey, right? Accepting where we are, accepting where we are as communicators. That's why you sleep at the end of a day, right? So that's why we get some rest and we get up and try again the next day. I know I'm better. I've learned not to I sometimes work late into the night, and I've learned, like, don't make any big decisions during that time. When you're fatigued, rest. Self-care is a big part of becoming a really good communicator, because you have to take care of yourself to pull off some of these pro moves that I'm teaching in the book. And so there's a little bit about stress management and change management as well in this book, because it really all ties together. I'm very happy that it ended up applying to folks' personal and professional lives.
Yes, I found it to be very powerful in doing that, being able to really go across all boundaries in many ways, and to
Thank
help
you.
people, yes, and to help people be better communicators, because my goodness, if we can't do that, our meaning is completely off and we don't even know that we're doing it.
Amen. Thank you for saying that. This is one of the first times I've become vulnerable enough to author, to actually put my name under personal stories that were somewhat difficult to share. And I thought doing so and tapping into my personal life in the ways that I did would help people feel like their experiences that might be similar are also things they can work through or turn into assets.
So, do our words have power?
Of course, they have probably more ripple effects than we'll ever know, because I speak maybe a kind word to my server at a restaurant at lunch, and then they turn around and lift someone else's day a bit, and then that person continues the kindness or the listening or the energy that they've been given in communication. And I think it might go on forever. So it's a worthy topic to study. Words have power.
What things do you want our listeners and readers to take away from your book?
Oh, there's so much that I hope is helpful to our readers and listeners. I'd like for them to know that courage is something that's intangible, but it's so vital that we find it in ourselves. And a great place to do that is to start with baby steps as a communicator. No one else can do that for us. So it's a beautiful decision when someone says, my goal this year is to work on, and then they have a specific idea in mind of what they're going to do differently as a communicator. And the book is meant to be a handbook to guide them to what that small change could be, so that they can receive the gifts that come from the effort. When we get better at communication, there's such a high return on investment for our effort, because life gets less complicated. And I want to assure people that that's true.
I think it makes such a big difference. And while being able to apologize isn't an issue, right, for some people, being able to be in a place where you don't have to do it often because you're communicating well is even better.
Oh my gosh, that's brilliant. I need to write that down. When someone says, why did you write the book? I'm going to say, so we can all apologize less. Yes. Or maybe that's just me that I don't like to lose. And sometimes an apology feels like a loss, but I take a risk. And so I write a lot about risk in the book, and risk is engaging in a new mindset or new behavior with no guarantee of what the result will be, but a belief that something good might come from this. So whenever I'm feeling a little out on a limb, or like I'm stretching beyond my personal comfort zone, I know learning is occurring. And so I try to hang out there for sometimes just a few seconds longer. A few seconds of listening or thinking or speaking longer can make a difference.
Well, Michelle, where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community and learn more about your work?
We'd love to see them sign up for our quarterly e-newsletter. It's free. It's called Breakdown, and I named it after one of my favorite Tom Petty songs. I'm a big rock and roll fan. They can find that at our website, GladieuxConsulting.com. It's a French last name, tricky to spell. It's Glad, I-E-U-X, Consulting.com. And then we put a ton of free tools and short research summaries and Coach's Corner, question and answer with real live humans with real live communication challenges. So I think the website's a good place to start. And we're also posting regularly on Instagram and Facebook as Gladieux Consulting.
Well, Michelle, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
It was a true pleasure. Thanks for your 7 years of work on this radio show. It really makes a difference in lives, I'm sure.
My goodness, thank you so much, Michelle, and thank you for your book, Communicate with Courage. I found this to be such an impactful book. It's part of my personal library. So make sure to drop by Michelle's website, GladieuxConsulting.com. That's GLADIEUX Consulting.com. There you can learn more about her work and also be part of her community. Make sure to pick up your copy of Communicate with Courage. It's available Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and everywhere books are sold. And if it's not on the shelf, just ask for them to order it. Remember, support our indie bookstores. On that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We're going to pause here to get a word from our sponsors that make this show possible. We'll be right back after these messages.
Are you a coffee lover who wants to make a difference? Look no further than Fire Department Coffee, a veteran-owned business that gives back to support first responders in need. Each batch of coffee is freshly roasted right here in the USA by a dedicated team of first responders and coffee experts. So when you enjoy a cup of Fire Department coffee, you're not only drinking high-quality coffee, you're supporting members of your community. Start your day with a coffee that gives back. Visit firedepartmentcoffee.com. That's fire, D-E-P-T, coffee.com.
Are you looking to untangle life's riddles? Discover the profound teachings of Dr. Shai Tabali, renowned philosopher, best-selling author, and your guide to self-empowerment. With methods that harmonize psychological and spiritual principles, Dr. Tabali's wisdom offers a pathway to holistic transformation. Take that first step today and join thousands globally and embrace the journey to higher consciousness. Visit shaitabali.com, that's SHAITUBALI.com now.
Hello, Dr. Cutler here. Do you experience bloating, heartburn, food craving, bowel irregularity, food sensitivities, weight issues? If you do not digest your food, you may be deficient in macronutrients, which your body needs for optimal health. DrEllenCutler.com teaches that this is an enzyme deficiency. I believe the most important supplement is a full-spectrum digestive enzyme, Dr. Ellen's Way Digestive Enzymes. Hear more about it at DrEllenCutler.com.
Are you chasing profitability yet losing fulfillment? Let me introduce you to your solution, the Relaunch Company. I'm Hillary DeCesar, an entrepreneurial performance coach, fearless leader of the Relaunch Company, here to help put the pedal to the metal and relaunch your business your way. Visit www.therelaunch.com. Take the free quiz to learn 3 steps towards waving goodbye to burnout and hello to success.
The book Terminal Cancer is a Misdiagnosis, authored by Danny Carroll, is on sale at Amazon now. Licensed psychologist and psychotherapist Tessa Antiojon-Guerra commented, "This is one of the most empowering books on the topic of cancer you will ever read." Award-winning author T.L. Needham commented, "This recommended book can be understood by anyone seeking answers, hope, and alternatives to a terminal diagnosis. Buy it now on Amazon.com.
Are you feeling disconnected from your life and your body as a woman? Do you feel numb emotionally and/or sexually and just not sure how to feel really alive again, or maybe for the first time? Are you struggling with body and self-acceptance, especially during menopause? If you'd like to reclaim your feminine and learn more about women and gynecology and how it can help empower your life, contact Gina Cloud at www.ginacloud.com.
I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary. A recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.